Do enough people know about Asisa? Because it's an amazing organization which links all these interesting financial and saving corporations together. Are they delivering a message out there? Is there more that people could do with Asisa entrepreneurs? Because it seems like it's a fantastic organization whose message needs to get out there.
Yep.
You can link more people.
Absolutely. And I think Asisa, if you work in financial services, you probably are familiar with Asisa.
Okay.
If you work within the government space with the legislature and those sorts of things, you're probably aware of Asisa because there's a lot of interaction that happens between financial services, government and Asisa. They kind of are the go-betweens. But I think if you are a customer, either a retail customer or an institutional customer or just an ordinary citizen, you probably don't know as much about Asisa as you could and as you should. Because effectively Asisa has been established to look after the interest of financial services. I think as financial services, we haven't always had the best reputations across the world. And part of what Asisa are trying to do is to try and almost rehabilitate some of that image in a sort of meaningful way.
Yeah, they're great, and they've got academies and all sorts of, and a seed fund or a seed program. What is just, do you know much about that?
Yeah, they've got an enterprise development fund that they set up a few years ago. They've got a foundation, which is the beneficiary of the fund. And effectively what they do is, two of our businesses that we've been working with have in fact been able to get funding from the Asisa Enterprise Development Fund. The one is a waste company called Waste Want, social entrepreneur. They got a fairly decent injection of capital, as well as an IT company. They also were able to benefit from the investment support from the Asisa Enterprise Development Fund. And the cool thing is they haven't just given the money, they've also offered over a 7-year period business development support back into those businesses. So it's a pretty decent proposition.
And you also partner an organization called Edge Growth, am I correct?
Edge Growth are the service providers within the Asisa space.
Okay.
And Edge Growth have got quite a bit of experience in terms of business development and experience in terms of identifying enterprises to invest in. So they sort of running a lot of that portfolio on behalf of Asisa, and they work very, very closely with us in terms of our proposition. Because our proposition is one of doing initially a kind of a business analytics for each of the businesses that we partner with. On the back of that analytics, we look at a growth plan, and on the back of that growth plan, we look at either hooking up preferential procurement opportunities or hooking up investment support for those businesses.
So it seems like there are a lot of things that are changing, and especially in the financial services sector, where it's saying we need to engage more with entrepreneurs. What are the challenges that they're facing, entrepreneurs, and what needs to be done to overcome them and to address these issues?
I think we've had a lot of fairly deep conversations with the entrepreneurs that we partner with, as well as with the kind of broader range within the ecosystem. And two things constantly come up. The one is access to capital, because that's often a hurdle to further growth. And the second one tends to be access to markets. So what we've done in our space with our program is we've pulled in our group sourcing colleagues, and they're the ones that are responsible for kind of broadening the supply chain. And on the back of that, we've been able to look at how we're able to fold back a lot of the enterprises back into our supply chain. So we've been able to do that with a huge amount of success, not as much as we'd like to do. I think over the last year or so of our program, we've been able to unlock something like 2.1 million rands worth of additional opportunity for the enterprises on our program. So even though the main intent is not to provide procurement opportunities, the intent is to kind of make those companies more efficient. That's one of those important offshoots that we need to commit ourselves to.
And how can this relationship be fostered then? And what are the touch points for success?
The relationships between ourselves and the SMEs.
Absolutely.
I think there are a couple of very important touch points. The one is the personal one.
Okay.
If you've got a business owner who's supplying into an anonymous corporate, you need to find a way to make that supply relationship a lot less anonymous. So you need to be able to identify the person responsible for procurement, even the person responsible for pushing the button that does the payment. And you need to be able to build those relationships in a meaningful way. You also need to be in contact with the corporate on an ongoing basis to check that the service levels are where they ought to be. Because I think as corporates, we can't afford, we're looking after shareholder money, we're looking after policyholder money. We need to be very responsible in terms of the way that we look after that money. So we're not going to provide procurement opportunities to companies that A, are too expensive, they're not competitive, and B, they're not delivering on the service that they're meant to be providing. So there's a huge kind of focus on making sure that those two areas make sense.
And then finally, what can be done to support these relationships in South Africa?
The relationships with SMMEs. I think there are a number of things that need to be done. One of the things that's already been pretty decent has been the revising of the scorecard. Okay. There's a very clear shift to make sure that all corporates are looking at enterprise development as well as supplier development, and on the back of that, they're looking at preferential procurement. So there almost seems to be an encouragement of a fully rounded, systemic kind of approach. And that makes a lot of sense for us at Sanlam, because that's effectively the starting point for our particular programs. We want to have that systemic approach to make sure that you've almost got the cradle to grave kind of approach to enterprise development. So in terms of legislation, that seems to be kind of pointing in the right direction. In terms of the establishment of the new kind of business, the business focus within government, that's also indicating that job creation and poverty alleviation is going to remain top of the list. So being able to kind of unpack the wins that we're looking for on the National Development Plan in particular, that's actually been played out in terms of the way that government are acting. So I think the public-private partnership, that particular relationship is being strengthened, and I think it needs to be strengthened, because we've got our role to play as corporates, but at the same time, the public sector have their role to play, and of course you've got civil society, the NGOs that we often work with, that have also got their role to play in terms of job creation and poverty alleviation.